Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're going to be looking at what has your body been trying to tell you and why you've been taught to ignore it. Or some of you may have. What is something you feel you might want to come away with today, if anything? What's something you've been wanting some support with? And even if you don't put it in the chat, you just write it down for yourself. I have something exciting. Stick around and I'll share with you. We're going to do a process. We're going to do a core, such a simple core process that majority of modalities build from. And if they don't, they're probably not very efficient, let's just say. Okay? Whether you're a spiritual seeker type or whether you're looking at ways to biohack your system for longevity and health and wellness, connection with the body is imperative. So, welcome. I'm Cynthia. Some of you know me, some of you don't. Wherever you're watching me from, you can go and look at the bio, but I've been around for a while. So, literally yesterday just landed again, and I thought, why not throw in a pop-up live to see who's around and who may want to sit in the presence with me. Okay, so before we get into the technique, what I'm about to show you is something that's been sitting in plain sight, right? It's in plain sight for most of your lives. So you can let me know in the chat as you go along. This is something that we could do every moment, every day, for free. What? Yeah, for free. Doesn't cost anything but your time, your consciousness. I mean, that's priceless, really, isn't it? So it's something your body has been trying to tell you since you were young, since you were aware, right? And so much, and I'm a spiritual teacher, and I'm a director, spiritual director, but you know, I did teach awakening, ascension, descension, soul embodiment, you know, yoga, tantra, energy medicine, mediumship, trance, channeling, all the things, okay? And I still do on occasion. My core practices are in the Academy of Conscious Evolution. So if you want to find me, that's where you can find me, the Academy for ConsciousEvolution.com. And it's an advancement on all of those practices. So spiritual teaching can quietly train you to override what we're going to touch in today or touch on today. So we're not saying it's all hogwash or whatever. We're saying be mindful, be aware. Notice if you're bypassing, which pretty much just means, what are you trying to get out of? What scares you? Where is your fear? What is fear? So my expertise is in spirit, but also trauma, and I'm researching fear. So let's begin and start to look at that. Like, the most dangerous teaching in spiritual development has been this hiding in plain sight. Your body's wisdom is separate from your divine nature. This is taught, has been taught. Now, if you connected in here, you probably have followed people and found your body, so to speak. Found the matter, mata, mother. Okay. So think about, and so here's where you come in. Think about how you were taught to relate to fear. contemplate. When I say think about, contemplate. Feel into what were you taught? And maybe, you know, in this moment you aren't able to contact that. But just take a few seconds to go, what do I know about fear? What was I taught? How was I taught to relate to fear? So this is practical. I'm a practical mystic, meaning I bring it into your everyday experience so that you can experience what I'm talking about directly. So it's a very simple process that we're going to go into, but we need to contact some beliefs, some ways of knowing first. So just contemplating, because I'm about how do you know what you know? What's the meaning making? How do you know what you know? How do you know what you know is true, false, good, bad, indifferent? Love, fear, heaven, earth. Okay? So we're not talking about the fear of physical danger as such. I mean the fear that shows up when you're about to say something true. I had our inner circle call yesterday, which is it's twice a month on a Tuesday/Wednesday if you're in Australia. It's a Wednesday. And you know, we went deeper into this, but as I was speaking to them, I was feeling in my body. So as we speak, even if as I'm speaking to you, are you aware of your body? Are you aware of sensation? Are you aware of your toes? Are you aware of your fingers? I'm aware of my fingers because they're cold. It's cold here. What's internally happening? Are you aware? So just making that contact. So fear as in, you know, when you're leaving something familiar. And there's lots of feelings about that. And allowing the body to be in that sensation. Right? The sensation, not the emotion, the sensation. The sensation is what comes in first. The sensation is through the energetics, through the nervous system, creates sensation. You then pick that up based on your experience and a lot of other information, you're encoding, and you make meaning from that. Hence me asking you, where did you learn? Where, you know, how do you know? Who and how were you taught to relate to fear? How do you relate? What's your relationship to fear? Right. The fear around stepping towards something that actually matters. What do you feel? Have any of those things happened recently? Like you were moving into something new or out of something comfortable, stepping towards something that, you know, you have passion about. Feel free to share, put in the chat. It brings more energy, it brings more presence, brings more connection, brings more intimacy. So what were you taught to do with that fear? That's the second question. What were you taught to do with that fear? Or we could say, what do you know to do with that fear, and where does it come from? What were you taught? So this is all around your belief system and your conditioning. And we were all conditioned, and we still are. And it's bringing awareness to that conditioning, to that encoding. So when we're young, our memory, I'm not going to go into memory maybe another day, but how our memory is laid down is different at different developmental stages, right? So when we're young infants, we're what I call encoded. You've got your recorder on and it's just recording. There's no filtering, okay? Encoding. So you hear the people around you, you feel the sensations around you, and it's just purely recorded into your system, okay? And at different stages of development, your memory works differently, and then, in trauma and a trauma response is where the memory and how that's laid down is, let's say, corrupted or interfered with because of the chemicals of the brain and whatnot. All right, so have you answered this second question for yourselves? Let me just read the chat. Yeah, so you weren't taught as such. Probably, well, most of us were encoded, we're conditioned, and it's unconscious. So that's why doing these simple reflections, and then we're going to go into the next part of the process in a moment to experience it directly, because we do not remember because of that encoding, okay? So, I'm really just saying, hey, what we were taught is not how it is, and let's use, you don't have to believe me, that's why it's experiential. Let's utilize your own states of consciousness to see what's true for you now. Yeah? Okay, yeah. So if you weren't heard, you weren't seen, you weren't celebrated, you weren't, the touch you received wasn't appropriate, so it was, whatever that means to you, right? Whether you were laughed at, whether things were too serious, whether you were heard, seen, all the things, they then lay down in the memory and in the system, and some people will then call that attachment styles, right? Or attachment injury. Right? A little bit different to trauma. The behaviors that come from that play out in our lives all through our adulthood. We can be made aware of them, and some of you will know there's a lot on social media about attachment styles, the push-pull. There's so many attachment styles, and they're intricate. It's actually quite beautiful. What I do, and I'm trained in all of that, I'm a sensory motor psychotherapist, I know all about the ins and outs of trauma and attachment styles, but what we're doing here almost trumps it all, because you can have the intellectual knowledge and still have a pretty crappy experience in your life, right? Knowing it doesn't tend to change it. Knowing it in the lower mind. Being more conscious that majority of our day we are unconscious is a starting point. It's going, okay, and that's what, mystics, yogis, yoginis, all the rest of it are aware that we're unconscious. And so that awareness of being unconscious, we're conscious that we're unconscious. And when we step into that in every moment going, okay, what's going on here? Because it's impossible to be fully conscious in this life in the way that I'm talking about consciousness, right? That's why we're here. That's why we're here. We can maybe debate that another day. But anyway, all right, so let's get into it. Take a breath. And being conscious of the breath. One of the ways that we've been taught to be in relationship with fear or taught to do with fear is to breathe through it, yeah? To push past it. I'm ex-military, so adapt and overcome was something that I said all the time. Adapt and overcome, adapt and overcome, adapt and overcome. If it was hard, adapt to the hardness, the physical hardness, and overcome. Adapt and overcome. The 7 Ps. Prior preparation and planning prevents poor performance. You know, it's like all this stuff. Why? To keep going. Why? Because our lives were at risk, or somebody else's life, right? Coming from that, and then, you know, most people who are in those that have some sort of trauma, right? So coming out of that, and my friends around me who are coming back from all sorts of experiences, traumatized, and 5 generations of my family, military, lots of trauma. So no wonder I went into it, trying to understand the behaviors, what makes people tick, why do people do what they do. I've spent my life, over 30 years, about 31 years now, professionally studying this stuff, but my whole life studying the human condition, right? So we pushed past it, we meditated away. Do you know meditation is a form of bypassing for some people? We affirm it into silence. But all of these techniques treat you or your body's signals as noise, as static, right? To be cleaned and cleared and done something with, so the real spiritual work can then happen. And some of you know me from that, you know, I do teach and do meditation and all the rest of it, bringing in this other, the underneath, the first points of contact to go, okay, how do we bring heaven to earth, right? We acknowledge our body, our matter, and the signals, the intelligence of how it speaks. So what's been suppressed? What's been suppressed? Your fear, your sensations, your gut feelings. Yeah, for some of you, they're not obstacles to illumination or enlightenment, right? They're intelligence, it's data, speaking in the only language your nervous system has ever known or ever known how to use, right? There's been a suppression of the understanding of fear. And we're taught to get rid of it, to be afraid of your fear. The fear is not what hurts or harms you, right? There's love and fear. That's it. It's the fear of the fear that creates the anxiety and the disruptive. It's like if we look at it as a signal, for instance, there's a signal that something needs to be looked at, and then there's another signal that tries to cancel it out. So think of it like an autoimmune response. Fear is like an autoimmune response. It starts to eat itself or rub up against itself. It's like the signal of fear is purely just a signal of, is it safe, for instance? And then the system picks it up and goes, this sensation is saying, are you safe? Are you safe? And there's a response of, I have to fight you and cut you out. It's just like an autoimmune disorder, if you know how all of that works. In my mind, that's what I'm seeing as I'm speaking, right? So rather than fighting yourself, you create a new type of relationship, because many people who are still seeing fear as something to overcome or to suppress or to get out of, and every modality We'll be showing you how to get rid of it. And I'm saying it's wrong. It's when you understand that half of you is fear. So we could say, okay, a lot of people talk about masculine, feminine. Masculine, feminine, love, fear. So when we're going love and masculine, and fear and feminine is suppressed, you're only working on half, if that, of your whole self, your whole system. There is no way, and happy to hear your responses to it, there is no way that you can complete your journey with half a system. It is impossible. You have been lied to, and I'm here to share all of it with you. From 8 years old, I was asking the questions, and like I said yesterday, we had a class, and I was recalling that when I was in primary school, I was about 7, and there was a priest there, and he was telling me some stuff, and I asked him a few questions, and he couldn't answer me. And from that day, I just got this sense that they don't know what they're talking about. And I've spent my life looking at that. Now, I'm a metaphysical minister. I'm a minister of unconditional love. But I teach from this way of knowing. All the ways of knowing, they come back to this. I'm not here to talk about that necessarily today, but I will start doing some lives on the reclamation of this information. Because everything really is flipped. It's flipped. It's upside down and back to front. So once you start to have a relationship with yourself and you're getting your own signals, your own intelligence, you no longer have to listen to people, not even me, outside of yourself. This is what was suppressed. So how can you be your magnificent self when you're running from half of yourself? You've been taught, it's unconscious. When something happens to you, say you get a headache, you get an ache, a pain, what do? What's the first thing you do? Many of you have been conditioned to reach for a pill, reach outside of yourself. Yes? No? Maybe so? Or do you go in and meet that sensation and ask its intelligence? So let's look at that. Let's look at some of that. Because what I've seen over my 30 years of clinical practice is that I've worked in trauma, addiction, brain injury, complex grief, all sorts of areas, consciousness, research, and the pattern keeps showing up, right? Clients, seekers, the moment they stopped trying to transcend their body, they started to actually listen to it, was the moment that things start to change. It's the moment that things start to change. I was actually saying yesterday, the presence, which is when you can bring love and fear together, all masculine, feminine, all left, right, good, bad, together, it's then outside of the nervous system, which is what? Presence. It's presence. And presence is what heals. Those of you that sit in grace with me, that people have healing experiences, right? It's the presence. I used to look at this when I was a social worker, and I used to do field work. I'd find people on the streets, and often they would be broken, like physically broken, because the streets are rough, okay? And I would sit and be with them, and they would walk away smiling, and it baffled me. It was the presence. It wasn't what I said or what I did. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't the medication. It wasn't. That's why placebo works. Like, I don't care if it's placebo or if it actually worked. It's when I started to look at the presence. Why was what I was doing working and the people that were, trained the same and whatnot not? It was that presence. So how do you get there? This is the first step. So your body it's not necessarily the vehicle of that your soul is trapped in. It's not the cage. It's a cage if your beliefs and conditioning have made it a cage, right? That's your prison. But your body's where your soul does its talking, so to speak, right? So we're going to be going into a little practice to show you live in your own body in just a few minutes how to start to read a signal you were taught to ignore possibly your whole lives. Okay? So, let's do it together. So wherever you're watching from, just come into a position where you're stable, like your feet are on the floor or your body is supported. You don't necessarily need to close your eyes, or if it's safe for you, you can close your eyes or just do a downward gaze, a drishti we call it, or one pointed focus, and take a breath. Take a breath through your nose if you can. And then sigh out your mouth. Just do a couple of those just to settle in. Just connecting with yourself, with your body, with your magnificent matter. And now I invite you to bring to mind one thing, just one, just a moment that you've been avoiding, something you've been avoiding. Not the biggest thing. We're not going to big traumas here. This is just the very first point. It's something that you could do regularly through the day. It helps you process the day as well. Right? So you're just bringing one thing to mind that you've been avoiding. One thing you've been putting off. Maybe you've been putting off feeling something, like there's been a lot going on in your life and you've been putting off feeling and processing that. Maybe you could just name that. Something you've been putting off saying to someone. Something you've been putting off deciding or making a decision on. So just bringing something to mind. And it's not that you're thinking about it, you're literally just making contact. So for instance, if it's something you've been putting off feeling, so maybe it's something you need to do or something you've moved away from, you're just bringing it to mind. You're not ruminating, just bringing it to mind. Now, what you're going to do is feel for it. So as it comes to mind, because your energy in your system, even before you're fully aware, your system, your body is aware. Okay? So bringing that something to mind and then feel for it in your body. So it's a sensation. And maybe there's many sensations going on for you right now, but just being aware and observing one sensation that maybe is strongest, or maybe you have a couple, right? So just being aware and witnessing sensation in your body. You're not doing anything else about it. You're not trying to work out what it is. You're just being the observer of a sensation in your body when you bring whatever you've been avoiding to the forefront. So you're just going, yeah, I've been avoiding that, then feel into the body. So I'll just give you a moment to really make connection with that sensation, meaning you're just bringing your intention to it. Oh, there it is. You can maybe go, what's it feel like? Where is it in the body? And just observe it, watch it, be aware of it. You're not trying to change it. You're not trying to make it anything more or less. You're purely just being with it. So if you feel like you want to analyze it or fix it, or maybe it's creating some discomfort and you want to make it go, or do your best. We're only going to stay with it for a moment, and you're simply locating the signal and noticing what happens. Noticing what happens. Has it shifted? Has it changed? Did it move? So just from bringing your awareness, bringing your attention to the sensation. What happened, if anything? And now, so just make a note of that, either in your mind's eye or, did it shift? Did it move? What happened? And then we're going to go into the next part, that instead of asking, how do I make this feeling go away? We can ask the sensation one question, just silently to yourself. So silently to yourself in your own mind, what are you protecting me from? What are you protecting me from? And just listen with your whole body. What are you protecting me from? And listen, and be the first thing that comes to you. It may not make sense. It doesn't have to. You're building a new relationship with fear. An intimate, compassionate, kind relationship with fear. So you might get a word, you might get an image, you may get nothing. You may feel that you got nothing, but no information is still information. Might be a slight release. And whatever you get is whatever you get. So just take a breath. And when you're ready, you're just going to come back to the rest of your body, the rest of yourself. If you want to do that again, you could see what the charge, because what we're doing is we're releasing charge. It's actually voltage, that when you hold and suppress, that voltage can't move through the system, and therefore that charge or that voltage is then not available to your body as energy. So when you release, so doing this process releases, because you feel the sensation, which is the charge. It's going zzz, 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 right? And when it can be supported to do what it needs to do, it will feel different. It will move different. So bring to mind again that experience just for a moment, and then check in with your body and see if the sensation is as strong, if it's disappeared, if it's stronger. Just checking in. Has it changed? Has it changed? Just observe. Notice. This is you connecting with your fear. Fear as intelligence. Fear as data that is the most overlooked spiritual technology. It's fear as spiritual technology. Because fear alone is not what harms you. It is your fear of the fear. And because we've been taught to suppress, to punch, to push, to hide it, suppress it, right? That charge and that information just has to find another way to communicate with you. So when you can meet it with compassion, just like you did, witnessing, observing, you get your own information. You may not understand it, you don't need to. It's making contact and building that relationship so that you no longer have a toxic relationship with this part of you. It starts to be a kind and in time loving, compassionate relationship. So you can become a complete being and move forward. Or backwards or sideways or wherever you want to move. Okay. So when you've done that, feel free to put it in the chat what you experienced. I'd love to see, hear what happened for you. if anything, even if you say no thing, right? No data is still data. So it's coming back to your general state of consciousness, back into the room or wherever you are. And that's the simplicity of it. It's so simple, you probably won't do it. The most powerful, effective processes are so simple that our mind gets in the way and we don't do it because it can't possibly work. And I'm telling you, the mystical experiences are the most simple. They're so simple and easy. But we want things to be complex. We want things to be challenging. They don't have to be. So that is body intelligence. That is fear as spiritual technology. Yeah. Fear wants to protect me, but the protection is obsessive and works against me from moving forward. Fear doesn't work against you. Fear of fear works against you. The signal against the signal works against you. So when you can start to have a relationship with fear, that next part will cease to happen because you have that compassion. Does that make sense? It's like you become conscious that there's an attack on fear. And so it's a practice. And if you practice just connecting like we did today, you can go back and look at, so go onto YouTube and look at the replay and just do the process. Literally, you could do it in 1 minute. Bring something to mind. Where's the sensation? Meet the sensation like as an awareness. Observe it, watch it, be the witness of it, and that's it, right? That's the very first part. There's obviously other parts, but even just doing that, if you do that alone, the fears of, so the fear of fear or the fear of love, because love and fear on their own is not what is attacking the system. It's the signal attacking the original signal, which feels vulnerable. Yeah. And so when you build that relationship, like any relationship, when you first meet somebody, there is some vulnerability. You know, generally there's some vulnerability. You don't know them. You don't know if you can trust them, you know, all this sort of stuff, whatever comes up. Or maybe you jump straight in, you don't have boundaries. Like whatever it is, you know, that's why we don't necessarily have to know the ins and outs of your, you know, psychology to deal with all the stuff, because all the psychology and the attachment styles and the different diagnosis and whatnot come back to this. All the parts of the self, if you're into IFS or parts theory, where do those parts come from? They come from here. They're the fear of, or the fear of love, fear of fear. That's what creates the parts. That's what creates the fragmentation. Okay? So purely just coming back and creating that real core relationship, you'll see a change in the rest of it. But it is a practice, and we forget. So it's not something to defeat. It's not something to try and get out of. It's something to actually move towards. And look, if you've got mental health, severe mental health, then you're going to need support. Right? You're going to need support. And doing this, it is the start of trauma work, but you can't do that deep trauma work by yourself, because of the fear of fear comes up, or the fear of love comes up, and you can't get past it because of the terror. Right? So then you would get support on that. But building a relationship with yourself, you can do that wherever you're at. Okay, I put together something so that if you're intrigued and you want to learn a little bit more, I've got the 8 modules of I call it the CLF, but it's Consciousness Literacy Foundation. But what I've done is I've made the first module $1. It's $1, right? I've built it in a whole nother, in School. I don't know if you know School. So I've got my main portals which hold the entire program, but I've created the $1 module 1, which is 2 hours of live recording. It's got short audio trainings that are like 10 or 15 minutes if you don't have a lot of time, right? You've got your module 1 workbook. It's the whole module 1 of the full program. If you want to go a little bit deeper, I've made it $1. If you want to go further and dip your toe in, now I've made it in the platform School, so it's completely separate from my usual portals. So once you pay the $1, you go straight to the School platform, and there's no other costs. It's not a membership. It's basically just information there. You pay your $1, you go to the School, you access the information, and there's nothing else for you to do. You don't need to cancel it. You don't need to upgrade. You don't need to do anything. Now, if you want to do the whole program, then you can contact me for the whole program. So I'll put the link there for the $1 trial. You don't have to cancel anything. You're not going to be charged anything more. And you just go in there. It is the recording of the live session I did at the beginning of the year. It's a 2-hour video, but I've created audio teachings, the short teachings of the core processes. So if you don't have time, you can go and go through those audio trainings. There's a full workbook, module 1 workbook in there too. If what I'm saying and what I'm talking about intrigues you, I'm sure you can find $1 if you're interested, or just private message me and I'll send it to you. If you wanted to do a little bit more and find out more about the theory of what we just talked about, so within consciousness literacy there's 2 arms, fear literacy and spirit literacy. So that's the 2 arms that make up consciousness literacy. So the introduction to Consciousness Literacy Foundation, that's why it's the foundation, it's an introduction to the whole system. You'll get a little bit of fear literacy, which is what we touched on today, and a little bit of spirit literacy. So if you're interested in, spiritual development and whatnot, it shows through this lens how to build that capacity within yourself. Okay, so are there any questions or any comments? Anyone want to share anything? What you experienced, what you didn't experience? Did the sensation dissipate? Did it get worse? Did it move? A lot of people, depending on what the situation is, if you want to go through a whole system, if you are experiencing something more severe, you can contact me for an actual session where I will take you down through the layers to contact what's going on for you if there's trauma. All right, so thank you for being here, for trusting your body enough to listen for just a couple of minutes. I know we've been here an hour, but really the process is just a couple of minutes to just make that contact, to feel where it is. If you want to go deeper, you've got the $1 trial or introduction to get a taste and to go a little bit deeper on your own. If you need support, you know where I am. It takes courage to sometimes to touch into areas that you're not aware of or that have been frightening in the past. So it really is building on that and practicing. So I shall see you next week. If you're on the email list, you'll get an email at some point, and I'll let you know when I'll do those pop-ups and start to get a regular time for those as well. So go gently. with what came up for you tonight or today. And until we meet again, may the blessings be. Much love.